Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm Chris Lee, back from the dead. I've been gone a while, not intentional, but glad to be joining Billy and Luke on the roundtable episode. It has been a busy several months for me for various reasons, but glad to be back with you gentlemen as we are, 9 days out from football as we do this, Billy?
Mm-hmm. Yep, 9 days away.
Yeah, we will get into some brief fall camp thoughts. We will spend most of our time on the mailbag and just get as far as we can go. I've got a out here in about 40 minutes. You guys may go beyond me, but we will make the most of it. But football talk is in the air. Billy, I know you've been at most of the practices. I guess I'll get you to give a 2-minute overview on what you've seen and then do that to Luke. And then I think we'll dive into the mailbag here pretty soon. But before we do that, I'll let you guys prepare your thoughts. Hey, a lot of what I spent my time on recently is just keeping the business together. Businesses need funding to pay people. You need subscriptions, you need sponsorships. And the way we have made this work is sponsors. We've got a few that are rejoining us or a couple that are new. We've got some old familiar faces for this season of the podcast. And so I wanted to start by thanking several people. The Wash House, the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company, Sutherland and Belk, John Levin, and a new one, Yeaman Packaging Services. So welcome our sponsors this year. Let me tell you about our two bigger ones that sponsor basketball season and baseball season, respectively. The Wash House sponsors our hoops content. Are you dreading laundry day? Is it stealing time for the things you truly enjoy? Let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you with 2 convenient locations in the Nashville area. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and our professional attendants will give you back the one thing you can never have enough of. That's your time. I can promise you that. You can never have enough time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry ready to be put away. Check out washhouseclean.com. Stop in and get your time back. Baseball season and its topics presented by the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company, a family-owned third-generation milk and ice cream distribution company located in Murfreesboro. Partnership began over 50 years ago with Purity Dairy in Nashville to provide Purity milk and ice cream to consumers in Middle Tennessee. They now serve Southern Kentucky, Northern Alabama, Chattanooga, and North Georgia. Today, they supply grocery stores, convenience stores, and others with Purity products, as well as Mayfield, Nestle, Haagen-Dazs ice cream. For more information, visit their website at mpmci.com. Go get your Purity ice cream. Homemade vanilla happens to be my favorite, but they are all good. Help out the folks who help our show. Luke, I'll start with you. A couple of minutes of thoughts on what you've seen in fall camp, please.
Yeah, I've seen 3 practices, 2 scrimmages, and another practice, and I've also had access to watch some film. And I said this at a couple of the shows that Billy and I have been on. I wish we could start the season with Alcorn State. And the reason I say that is I think this team just needs a little more time to get things right on the offensive side of the ball. Virginia Tech's going to be a tough road. It's going to have to be a low-scoring game, in my opinion, for us to have a chance to win. If it gets up in the 30s, we're not going to be able to hang with that. I just feel like ball security is imperative. We have to win the turnover battles in most of our games to have a chance to win them. But I do think what you're going to see against Virginia Tech, I know how people push the panic button, and it is very important, the opening game, obviously. But for what I've seen in practice and what I've seen on film, this team, I wish we didn't start playing for a couple more weeks, and I also wish we didn't have to play an opponent that's probably as good as maybe at least 4 or 5 or more teams in the SEC.
Yeah, you're going up against a Brent Pry lunch pail defense. That Bud Foster going back to those days under Shane Beamer. This is a legit defense, legit Virginia Tech team. I still think they're probably Auburn, Kentucky level, but we just don't know. So, Luke, you're right though. This offense needs a little bit more time. Just seeing them in camp, you didn't really get the sense in either of the scrimmages that there was much of a direction, much of an identity. Obviously, Diego Pavia has a ton of pressure on him, and I think we all agree he's going to start. But beyond him, who are your leaders that emerge on offense? How impactful can Cole Spence be? can Stowers be enough of a factor? Receivers is maybe the biggest question mark on the team, and that's never a good thing going into a season. Still like Cedric Alexander, and the offensive line too. I look at the receivers and the offensive line, guys. If they stay the way we think they're at right now, which is not a strength of the team, or even as much of a weakness as it is, I don't see this team getting where they want to be. But if this offensive line can play at the level Coach Klinakis wants them to play at, you could have something there. Still look at the receivers and just I'm nervous about what they can potentially provide. Defensively, up front, I think will still be a question, but the middle of that defense, the linebackers and safeties, I think they'll be fine. On the edge is where they'll be challenged, right? At the cornerback position, Kyron Drones is not necessarily a prolific passer, but in the play action game is where Vanderbilt can get hurt. I know we'll have a whole week of tech coverage next week, but yeah, Luke, I'm with you. It does. I'm starting to get the same feeling that is this offense ready, and you're never ready as an OC probably for the season, but this is intensified now that you're playing Virginia Tech, and we'll see. They're gonna have to drop the ball down and see what they can do. But Chris, the offense is the question, and I think it'll remain a question until we see what they've got against Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I'll start with my most optimistic take on things. I think that they are a lot better in the secondary. I think that Brandon Fontenette has been really, really good. And look, to clarify, you never know how good your guys are until they play somebody else's. But I get a sense that they really landed a dude in Brandon Fontenette. We know what CJ Taylor can do. I feel like Kobe Taylor, if he can keep his emotions in check, is going to be an improvement at one of those corner spots. And I feel like Martell Height maybe started to get a little better and lock down that other cornerback job. I don't know, lock down is the word, but get that later in camp. I thought Height was best corner they had on campus this time a year ago. You wanted to see him take a step up. You hated that they didn't get the use of those two FBS transfers just for situations that had nothing to do with football, because those guys, who knows, they might have both started. So I feel like the secondary could be the best part of this team. And I think their linebacking group too. I mean, we know Langston Patterson's a good player. And, I think they got a little depth with Prince Colley, and Brian Long will continue to show some things. And I think that the depth up front is better. So I think that I feel like the defense is going to be better. Now it's got to be a lot better for it to make a big difference. And we'll see on that. But that's my optimistic I don't know if spin's the right word, but that's my best foot forward for optimism, is I think it starts with defense. Offense, I agree with everything you said. I mean, I feel like I'd go to camp and you never saw like the same formation, maybe two plays in a row. I mean, and it wasn't like, shift this guy from in tight to flex tight end. It was like formations from one play to the next would look a lot different. I think once that comes together, that's going to be a lot to throw at people. If they can move the chains, not turn the ball over and complete passes. But I do wonder how much, as Luke said, how difficult is that making on them right now? Because those guys have got to learn it first because they can show it to somebody else. And I think your point about Alcorn State's a good one. I would keep your expectations in check offensively for that Virginia Tech game and maybe hope to be surprised, Luke. Is that a good way to put it?
It is. One other quick thing about the offense. One thing that we all see in practice and scrimmages, they're running a whole lot of different people in and out. They're running everything that they have in their playbook.
Yep.
They're going to, starting probably now, they're narrowing all that down to what they execute the best and what they can hopefully beat Virginia Tech with. Will that be enough? I think it's going to have to be a low-scoring game, I think, for us to win that game. Now, defensively, like you said, until you play somebody else, you're not sure how good we are. I know we're better on defense. How much better? I think we're a touchdown better in the whole scheme of things. And as time moves on, we will be a touchdown better on offense once the guys start clicking.
Yeah.
Vandy's going to have to out-scheme to win this year. And there's going to be a theme I realized, it hit me pretty hard a couple of days ago, just whether it's practice or scrimmages. On both sides of the ball, there's going to be a ton of eye candy, pre-snap eye candy, to create an advantage. And offensively, Vanderbilt's done that in the past, and defensively, we've seen it a little bit under Clark Lee. But, I mean, guys, Chris, especially in those scrimmages, there's a lot of defensive eye candy, and I think it's going to be a challenge for some mid-level offenses against this defense. Now, you still got to prevent the big play. That's what hurt them last year. But Vanderbilt, I think this defense will be opportunistic, and they will create opportunities for their offense. It's up to the offense, right? A lot of this year is going to be up to the offense, but also offensively, Luke, you're going to see just as much eye candy as well. And so I think if the offense can take that defensive mindset of being ahead of that defense, maybe one step with the eye candy, I think we could see some things. But again, it's just there's so many unknowns right now, just because you're kind of waiting on Virginia Tech.
One other quick thing, if I can, Chris, defensively, we talk about this a lot, and I think Joey and Billy did a pod on this. We're worried about, are we any better at a pass rush? You can pass rush doesn't have to come from the edge. We've got 2 linebackers that can play for a whole lot of SEC teams, really probably 3 or 4, and Cowan and Colley also. You can bring linebackers, you can bring safeties, and we obviously, like you mentioned, Chris, we're very talented at the safety position, I think. That's where you can go get people and get a pass rush. It doesn't always have to be from the edge. So I look for those packages to be effective as the season moves on.
Billy, let's get us into the mailbag. I'll have you pull up the questions while I'm giving credit to the folks who make it possible. First one, Sutherland and Belk. They present our mailbag every week, have presented every mailbag we have ever done. They have been the longest running sponsor of the podcast. It's been a decade now. That's incredible. Thank you to Taylor Sutherland and Russell Belk for your help and all you've done for us. Wonderful human beings. More importantly, if you need them, they're great at what they do. So if you've been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call, 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and that they can help you at Sutherland and Belk. Hopefully, you never need that, but if you do, they are your guys. A couple other friends of the program. John Levin is a sponsor of this podcast, good friend of the show, shareholder in the government contracts group, share at Wobble Bond Dixon. He thanks the student athletes at Vanderbilt University for their dedication, effort, and hard work. New sponsor of content also, the Yeaman Packaging Systems Company, leaders in end-of-line packaging automation. We thank those folks so much for their help here because they really are the people that make this possible. Still looking for help, looking for a sponsor for football season. So if anybody out there is interested, I would be more than happy to talk to you. We got to pay the bills. Got to pay Billy, Joey. Luke does it for free. But hosting, just all the costs that come with this and producing content, it has been a whirlwind in my off season just to keep our business model afloat. That's where a lot of my time has gone, and we're always looking for help. If anybody is interested. All right, Billy, let's roll out the mailbag, please.
All right, we'll start with Columbiano Door, and I guess we'll go the normal. I'll start with an answer, and then we'll go to Luke and then Chris. Columbiano Door. If the offense isn't clicking, who would you move up the depth chart to get things rolling? Also known as who has the most yard after catch ability among the freshmen. So we'll go ahead and answer that last part of the question. I've really liked what I've seen from Tristan Brown, one of the freshmen. Also, Micah Bell at times has popped. I think he's still learning how to play that receiver position. Another guy that has popped, especially in the scrimmages, and I think it was the last scrimmage we saw, was Joseph McVeigh, who has popped occasionally. I think has some more potential, not necessarily as a slot guy, but as a potential deep threat for that team. Whit Edwards has played a little bit of receiver, a little bit of tight end here or there. I think he's been moved to receiver. So I think down the road, he could be a guy that you throw it to him. He could get some yards after catch. But I would go with Tristan Brown right now, Luke, if anybody.
Yeah, I'll agree with the freshman evaluation. I also think that Fungy's going to help us just because of his frame. They're going to figure out what he can and can't do and limit his routes that he runs. But I think Fungy can really help this receiving core as the season moves on.
Yeah, and I think the question was freshman. Billy, you named the two that I was thinking of. I think in that order too. It was the order I would have named them in. I'll give you a wild card. This isn't a receiver, and it's also an upperclassman, but I think that Cam Johnson has been a big factor in their scrimmages. So I don't know. At some point, you see him just go 3 tight ends because Cam Johnson's caught a good number of passes, but that could be a little bit of a sleeper source of offense. I don't think he's going to go out and have a 1,000-yard season. But if he's a big, and I know they got 2 other tight ends in Stowers and Spence, but Johnson has done some things, and I think that's something that they've got a little bit under the radar that could be a source of help.
Yeah, that's a good point. They have to find a way to get him on the field, of course. Is Wiley in contention for wide receiver 3 over Fungi? And it's a good question. I mean, they're competing at that spot, I would guess. I mean, I think he's in contention. I don't know. There's no depth chart yet, but Luke, I think they're kind of trying to figure out is who fits that offense better. Is it a guy like Fungi who's bigger and more physical, or is it Wiley that can maybe get some yards after the catch and run some different routes? I think that's what they're trying to figure out. But also Wiley has been banged up, so.
Yeah, no, I think Cheryl and Skinner will do that. That's the reason why you need a body like Fungi to have that option, to have those where you just go up and throw it up and let the kid go get it. That's the reason why I mentioned him, and I think he will definitely be the third wide receiver, along with Richie Hoskins will still play a lot too, folks.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you guys to do this off the cuff, and I thought about giving mine first, but I don't want to bias yours. And maybe I need to give you my list because I've got it in front of me. I don't want us to think of pass catchers. I think we need to start thinking receivers and tight ends instead of just receivers. Is that a good way to put it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, and I guess if you want to take a running back as a pass catcher, I don't want to put anybody. I mean, you could have Cedric Alexander as a top 5 or 6 pass catcher. That wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. But let's just name our. I don't know. Name the pecking order of the top, maybe 6 to 8 pass catchers. I'm just gonna. I'd be curious to hear how you guys rank it. I'll put you on the spot first, Luke.
Okay. I'll go Cole Spence, not necessarily in any order, but the top 6: Cole Spence, Junior Sherrill, Quincy Skinner, Cam Johnson, Fungi, and Hoskins.
Interesting.
Billy? No Stowers.
Stowers,
yeah, I would go.
But yeah.
Go ahead, Luke.
No, go ahead. I was kind of agreeing with you.
Did you forget Stowers, or just you didn't have him in your group?
Well, he's going to be so multiple. I mean, Stowers is going to line up at receiver and tight end.
Yeah.
And, talk about the eye candy. I think everyone is going to notice Stowers on film from New Mexico State. He can be used as a decoy a whole lot in this offense.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go pretty similar. Cole Spence, Junior Sherrill. I think those two will, if I had to guess, will lead this team in receiving. Fungi is still a question mark to me. So I'll go Skinner and then Johnson, Cam Johnson. And then at the other receiver, I would put Stowers instead of Hoskins for you, Luke. I do think Hoskins will do more than people anticipate this year. I've liked what I've seen in practice. He hasn't been super involved, but he's a guy that's worked. He's put in his time. I think the staff likes him, especially on offense. So I think Hoskins will be involved. I'm not sure to what extent, but he's going to have to probably catch some balls as well. But it'll be a luxury if a guy like a Micah Bell makes a play here or there, or a Tristan Brown, or even Wiley. I think Wiley, we're still waiting to see what he turns into. But yeah, Chris, I'll go Spence, Sherrill, Skinner, Johnson, Fungi, and then Stowers as well. Throw Stowers in there.
Yeah, I went my top 2. I've kind of got them in tiers, and it is Spence and Sherrill in some order. I think I would probably go Sherrill and then Spence, just because of past production. Cole Spence has been, I think, their best target in camp when I've been there, but Sherrill's got a little more of a history. I don't know how often a tight end leads a team in catches and yardage. So I'd probably go Sherrill and Spence, but those were clearly my top 2. I think your next 2, I would probably go Stowers and Skinner in some order, maybe reverse order. I hadn't seen as much out of Skinner as I wanted to, but he's been in the offense. He's caught some balls before. I think those are your next two. I think your two after that are probably Hoskins, or your three after that, probably Hoskins, Cam Johnson, and Fungi. I feel like Fungi didn't do much at the start of camp, did more late. And then after that, I'd probably go maybe Tristan Brown's your eighth guy. I just hadn't seen much out of Wiley, and Bell is so new to that spot that I don't know. I don't know if I mentioned Cam Johnson. He would definitely be in that probably that top 6 or 7. And the other kid, that the Ivy League transfer, Emmanuel Adebayo, has been kind of interesting too. Not a real explosive guy, but it seems like it's taken like 5 guys to bring him down when he gets the ball. But I feel like the transfer portion of that room outside of Stowers just didn't step up and make the impact we were looking for.
Let's go over to the running backs. Another part of the question from Cumbleano Door is the lack of any explosive plays in the running game due to lack of running lanes from the offensive line, or the back's inability to break a tackle or make a man miss? That's hard to answer. I mean, again, that's probably something we can't answer till Virginia Tech. But Luke, the running backs are not, you don't have a Ray Davis back there or a Zach Stacy or some of the other better running backs Vandy has had. But I also don't think the offensive line at times has done their part either. But I think I would credit, when they have been able to run the football, Luke, I would credit the offensive line. But they haven't been as consistent, I think, as you wanted them to throughout fall camp.
Yeah, I think again, we don't have a running back who is an A-plus back, but you have a guy who's very serviceable in Cedric Alexander. I think he's far and away the best back as far as catching the ball, the backfield, and that type of thing. The offensive line is going to solidify. They're going to figure out the 6 or 7 or 8 that they can depend on as time moves on. And for some reason, guys, and I don't know why I feel this way, Gillespie seems to be kind of a gamer. As we start getting closer to the first game, he's really looked pretty good in practice in the films I've watched. He's gotten a lot better at picking up blocks. I think Gillespie may play a bigger role than we think.
I've been asked at various times how I felt about the offensive line. I've had a hard time answering that. I think this answer distills it into one thing. And you guys tell me if you disagree. And if you do, that's fine. Billy, you went to more practices than I did. I think I saw the 2 scrimmages and maybe another half dozen practices. I feel like the line was pretty consistent. And I know the question pertains to running backs, but it's relevant. I feel like the line was pretty consistent in opening up holes that could get you 2, 3, 4 yards. I feel like holes that could get you 20, 30, and 40 were almost non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
That's a good. Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it. They were pretty good in short yardage from the scrimmages. Like I told Joey, I think they'll be able to get 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. They'll be better equipped to get that, and that's what Beck talked about. We got to be able to get the 3rd and 1 when we need it, as opposed to having to go play action or have to throw it. Okay, Hogan knows, Luke knows how important it is to start a football season off on the right foot and with some mojo. How big do you think the home Virginia Tech game is to the Vandy program this season?
Well, as far as big to win it, obviously, if you win it, then it's wonderful. But it's imperative that we play well. Don't turn the ball over. Don't get beat 42-7. I think that's the most important thing. If we lose the football game, 31-17, and it's 24-17 going into the fourth quarter, I think we still got a chance to do some things. But if we go out and get blown out, then yeah, it's very important and can drag some kids down.
G-Barks 24, with Pavia's eligibility up at the end of the year and Nate Johnson likely transferring, who of the remaining rostered quarterbacks has the skill set that best fits the Tim Beck offense? It's a really good question. Still waiting on Johnson likely transferring there. I don't think you're way off there, but it's still waiting to see. I like Drew Dickey, and again, I don't think he's the prototype quarterback. If you were to sit down with Tim Beck and say, give me your quarterback, like create your perfect quarterback, I don't know if it's Drew Dickey's skill set, but Drew Dickey can run a little bit. He's not. I said on the board to somebody yesterday that he's not AJ Swan or Ken Seals. I mean, they were very limited in their running ability, but I think Drew Dickey, 3rd and 5, has to get out of the pocket. I think he could pick up first down here or there. So, guys, I might go with Drew Dickey. I mean, I like Hilaire a lot too, but Dickey's older, and if he's there next year, why not? Who knows? I mean, I know, Chris, you're a big Dickey guy, but I don't know if you guys think any other quarterback that would be on the roster next year fits better.
Yeah, I don't know. This offense is so new. I want to see a few games of it before. But I've always thought Dickey was the guy that this staff probably undervalued a little bit. I'm not saying he's a game changer. I feel like last year in fall camp, he probably made fewer mistakes than the other quarterbacks. I felt like he's not going to be a guy that's a 10, 600 meter guy, but he's got enough speed that if he breaks containment on 3rd and 4, you better guard that sideline or he can get there before you do. I don't know what that looks like in a game against somebody else's defense, but I always thought Drew Dickey did a pretty good job of managing the offense, doing a little bit with his arm, a little bit with his legs. I thought he was a better option than Walter Taylor coming out of camp last year. Now, yeah, I don't know what decisions that staff had to make last year based on NIL and fear of losing guys here and there and all the things that goes with it. But I always thought Dickey was the guy that I thought didn't get enough credit for what he did. And so I would be interested to see what that looks like.
12-game schedule, guys. Nate Johnson's going to play some this year. The thing that preconceived notion that he's going to be gone after this season, I don't see that because as well as I do, Pavia is going to get dinged at some point, and Nate's going to be the starter for some of these games, I think. I hope not. I hope Diego grabs it and we go one quarterback the whole year. But Nate's very talented with his legs. Yeah, he's been a little erratic, obviously, in camp, throwing the football. But we've seen what Nate Johnson can do. He is. There's times when he's flashed, and I haven't given up on Nate Johnson still being here next year.
Okay, Knoxville Door 94 win-loss predictions, and I gave mine a couple days ago on the season prediction podcast. Luke, we'll start with you, win-loss predictions, and then we'll go with Chris for whatever this is worth.
Yeah, I said it last week. I think we'll be between 4 and 6. If we somehow win the Virginia Tech game, I feel a lot better about 6. But yeah, 4 to 6 will be where we land.
I put together a model of a lot of services, FPI, SP Plus, just to see what the lines on games are going to be. And this is usually within a couple of points of the lines. They are unfortunately going to be a double-digit underdog in all 9 games against Power 5 teams. They got to get a lot better to get better than 3 and 9. That's where I'm going to go. Could they win 4, maybe even 5? Yeah, I think as Will pointed out on the show Monday or Tuesday, whenever you guys did that, Billy, nobody had them winning 5 games 2 years ago. And late in the season, when somebody else's locker room is crumbling and players are disinterested, you just never know when opportunity is going to present itself. But that seems like the one that, you make me bet my life on it right now. 3 and 9 seems like their most likely record.
All right, baseball bros. As someone who is growing somewhat apathetic towards the football program over the past 4 to 5 years, why should I get excited about this year's team and believe they can compete? Well, I think we've lined it out for you guys. At least we've tried to. What we've seen from the defense has been encouraging. They're athletic. Brandon Fontenette has been everywhere in practices and in both scrimmages, coming in on blitzes. I mean, he's going to do a lot for this defense. He's going to have to do a lot. But they've got solid depth at a lot of different positions as well. Like Chris said, they've got better depth on the defensive line. I think their first 4 defensive line that they'll probably go with is better than last year. They're more athletic. They're twitchy, I think, is a word that Coach Black and Coach Hay have said. So I think they'll be active. And that's been a calling card of Clark Lee's defense, is making plays at the line of scrimmage, whether it's on a blitz or a tipped ball, to give your offense the ball in good position. So I think that the defense and Clark Lee putting his focus on the defense is reason to be excited and to anticipate good things from this defense. Now, it might take time, just like the offense, and you've got a good opponent against Virginia Tech. But again, I think it'll be better. And then I'll say this too. Jerry Kill, a guy that has won a lot of games in his career, is the head coach of the offense. And you've also got his offense coordinator from New Mexico State and Tim Beck, and Diego Pavia is a gamer. I feel like a lot of people have forgotten and kind of scoffed at what he's done in his career too. So, they've heard all the all the negative things about them, and I think they'll have a plan this year of attacking it. Like Luke said, it might be different every week, but I think that is a little bit of the reason you should be excited. It's almost a mystery, very intriguing to see what can happen. So that's my try at it, Luke. I don't know if you got a stab.
Well, I'll be brief with this, but defensively, look at what Clark did at Notre Dame. Obviously, we don't have Notre Dame's players, but if you don't think Clark Lee knows defense, just like Woody Woodenhofer did or Bob Shoop did, you're sadly mistaken. And he's got enough. I think he's got enough talent on that side of the ball and depth for the first time. The portal has helped us in one way, guys. We now have, and especially on the defensive line, we now have guys we can run in and out of the game. So you can go 110% when you're in there. You used to couldn't do that because there was nothing behind you depth-wise unless it was a freshman. So that's going to help this team more than you ever know. Offensively, yeah, Kill and Beck aren't dummies. They'll figure it out. It may not happen in week one, but as the season goes on, they're going to figure out 15 to 20, 30 plays that work, and we're going to grind people with that. We're going to get it 3 and 4 yards at a time most of the time, but we can move the chain, control the clock, and probably win more low-scoring games than you'd ever think.
Yeah, I would echo most of what you guys said. I think your primary hope, the defense, I think could be a good bit better. And I think just the element of the unknown on offense, right? I mean, I think once they understand and get together what they're doing, now do they have the talent? That's another question. Season will decide that. But I've seen them win some games over the years where you just stick to it. You don't turn the ball over. You get a few your way. And I think I remember the year Bobby Johnson went down to Ole Miss and I think beat a team that ended up in a Cotton Bowl or something like that year. They were a lot better than Vanderbilt. And Ryan Hamilton had 3 picks, and I think they got outgained like 400 to $1.95, but they just held on to the ball. I think that it's going to take a scenario kind of like that. Maybe not a +3 turnover, but I think once they understand what they're doing offensively, look, you see teams that play the triple option have trouble, right? Like you don't want to, LSU and be playing Army in week 11 before you're playing Texas A&M or whoever. I think they could be a little bit like that, just with their different looks, with all the things they're doing. It's not going to be like preparing for any other offense. I think your hope is that somewhere in the package of all that, there's something that they can present to an opponent that they're not going to see, and on the right day, they're not prepared for.
All right, Chris, you got time for one more?
Yeah, I've got about 9 more minutes.
Okay, we'll try to fit a couple more in here. From HD Young 3, how much time should this current coaching staff get to turn things around? I hear some feel that if it isn't better this year, that things should change. I wish the staff would have been in place in year 2 instead of year 4, but I believe that 1 year isn't enough time to work through everything. Am I off base? That's something I've thought about. Luke, I don't think he's terribly off base, but at the same time, there's got to be some urgency this season to look a good bit better than you were last year, is what I'll say.
Well, you can't be 2-10 again. The 1-loss record has to get very minimum 3. I think it needs to get to 4 personally. And you guys know how I feel about Clark, but I think we're improved enough to where 4 wins should be the bottom for this team. I really do. Now, I always have to preface that with saying if you have a ton of turnovers and a ton of injuries, if you lose a Patterson and a C.J. Taylor, and then you lose a Pavia and Cole Spence on offense, obviously you're behind the 8 ball. But where we are as of right this minute when I speak, 4 wins should be enough, and I think that would bring them back.
Okay, let's go.
Billy, did you answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's off base there, like 1 year. Yeah. But I also see where, you are going into year 4. And so I do see both sides, but I don't know. I'm torn.
Yeah.
So, but again, I don't think he's terribly off the base there.
To me, it's the okay, now what? That's the problem. Okay, you get rid of this staff, then what do you do? The college football has changed a lot in this decade. This decade, they're 2-34 against Power 5 or now Power 4 opponents. They've scored 572 points in those games. They've been scored by 838. That's all been under the same athletic director and the same chancellor. That's who you trust to fix the problem if you fire this staff.
Well, I would say this: if you're having to get rid of that, and if basketball doesn't go well, you'll be finding a new athletic director as well as coaches. So, if we're going to go there, that's my feeling on that.
Okay, Ann Arbor door, and I like this question. Grade Pavia based on what you've seen in practices and scrimmages in the following areas, A through F. We'll start with ball security. I'll give him a B. I think he had, we've seen some interceptions, but we haven't seen any fumbled snaps or fumbles when he runs with it. Obviously, he's got to take care of the football, but Luke, I think he's done pretty well ball security wise.
Some of you fans that have been around since the 80s will remember a guy named Billy Cunningham. Billy Cunningham was probably the worst practice player in Vanderbilt history. He didn't care what he did in football. He's just going to knock your brains out when he could. Diego Pavia is that on offense. Diego doesn't really care how pretty he is in practice. If he makes a couple of mistakes here and there, it's because he's thinking about the next play. And Diego is going to be one of those guys that's going to be a gamer, folks. I promise you that. You're going to be so excited from week to week to watch Diego. He's going to make some mistakes every once in a while that will drive you batty. A little bit like Jay Cutler may force some stuff, and because of his ego and how confident or overconfident at times he may be, but you're going to love his style of play.
Okay, Chris, you got a grade for his ball security?
I think look, they've thrown some picks and some near picks in practices, and there's a lot of blame to go around. And let's be fair too. It's not like they got receivers just running wide, freaking open down the field, and that's part of it. And it's not like I think I'm more worried about their ability to just move the chains consistently than I am the turnovers. I think both of them are concerns, but again, I'm not giving a pass here. But it's been such a change and so many moving parts that I do think there's going to be a lot of settling that we haven't seen yet. So, but my fears is I haven't seen them move the ball consistently in practice. Now, I do feel, Billy, you tell me, you were there more practices. I do feel like that got a little better after the Saturday scrimmage, which was pretty dreadful offensively. But I felt like the ones that I saw this week, and maybe it was more ones running with ones and having some continuity, but I feel like that got a little better after that scrimmage Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. I think Tuesday's practice offensively, they were moving the football. There were some guys that were involved that haven't been involved. And so this has been a strategic progression throughout fall camp of who are we trying to get the football to? What are we trying to do? What works? Like Luke said. So it's been a hard eval offensively because of that. His accuracy is another thing. Ann Arbor asked us to grade. I think he's been the most accurate among the quarterbacks. Drew Dickey, you could probably argue, has been pretty accurate too, Chris. But Luke, I don't have a ton of qualms with his accuracy. Now, deep ball accuracy is something that I think slightly concerns you with Pavia, but I think he's been pretty accurate. And then you go down to decision making too. That's something that has caught my eye, that he's quick with his reads, and it's pretty rare you see in just a drastic mistake from Pavia in terms of a read.
Right. The other thing we're not talking about here, guys, is the adrenaline that he'll have in a game and how he'll focus in and hone in on what he's got to get done. And he, like I said, he's like a Billy Cunningham. Billy Cunningham treated games totally different than he did practices. It drove coaches crazy because if you'd have watched him in practice, you'd never thought he should be on the field. But when Saturdays came, he was starting and making plays all over the field. And I think Diego Pavia is that type of guy on offense.
Okay. Old Jackwagon, here's a unique question. Favorite restaurants for everyone at road games in the SEC? Just pick one, not for each and every SEC local. Luke, your favorite road SEC restaurant you've been to?
Whenever we play at LSU or Tulane, Pascal's Manali in New Orleans. Unbelievable.
Chris?
I'm the wrong guy. I hadn't been on many road trips lately, and when I am, I'm get into the game and get home. There isn't a lot of extra time to do whatever. So
yeah,
Luke would be the guy here.
I'll say for Joey and I'll speak for Joey and I. Wake Forest last year, their press box food was pretty good, so I might go with that. Even that's not even
That's
an
where
SEC
I am.
team.
It's ask me about the press box food when I go.
Okay, let's see here. JD Vandy, do you think there will be any difference in the game week prep with Coach Kill being here, and have the fall practices been any different in how they were run this year? We've had a fall camp practice question like that. I think they have. I don't think they've been totally different, but from practice number one, Jerry Kill was very involved with the offense, screaming at guys. It was more, coaches were more vocal, players were more vocal. So practices, yes. But Luke, I've been interested in this, and Joey actually asked Clark about this today. We'll get that presser up. Game week prep with Coach Kill. You think that'll be any different? Obviously, he's in the building and he's the head coach of the offense, so it'll probably be different. But I guess in which ways do you see that being different?
Well, I think Jerry Kill's biggest asset is what he will bring in the meeting rooms. What you don't see, what I don't see, is when he's watching the films with the other coaches and saying, guys, throw that out. He hasn't run that. He's only 10% of the time he's making that happen. That play's not working for Diego or whatever it may be, or the offensive line's not getting there when they're having to pull on this play. Throw that one out. Let's get it down. Let's hone it down to the plays that they do well and that they can execute. And that's where Jerry Kill's going to be invaluable.
Absolutely. Chris, we do have one more. I want to get one more in that you could answer here.
Sure.
Here's a good one. GVR 5804. Most of you are glass half full people. How bad is this offense really? And again, we can rephrase that too. We've seen the offense in scrimmages. How would you approach answering that just from what you've seen in practice, but also knowing that we probably haven't seen everything this offense has to offer going into
it's been really bad, but it's also very much a work in progress.
Luke, do you agree?
I'll say progress, but I'll tell everybody I worked there 40 years. My average record was 4-8. So, I mean, basically, I'm picking them to go at least 4-8. So I think that's where we are.
Chris, you got to get going.
Yeah, you guys are welcome to continue on without me. I've got an appointment to get to, but good to be back with you guys, and thank you.
Glad to have you back.
Adios.
Yeah.
All right, Luke. We've actually got a good bit more. I don't know if you're crunched for time, but we'll run through some of these.
Another 30 minutes.
Okay. Here's a good one. Denver Door. Do you see any correlation between this strength and conditioning offseason when Dwight Galt took the team with the first year of James Franklin? Obviously, Dwight Galt came in and woke everybody up. Felt like obviously that was talked about as being a huge impact. Do you see any correlation there?
Well, you know, the years I was at Vanderbilt, I had a lot of strength coaches. And the one thing that always seemed to be this way was when you'd have a strength coach that had one philosophy and the next guy came in and he was totally opposite. That's what we have here, going from Horrigan to, I'm sorry, his name escapes me right now.
Steiner.
Going from Horrigan to Steiner. Steiner is I'll put him in the class of John Sisk, of Chris Gaines, of Dwight Galt, that type of strength coach. They're demanding. They don't put up with you being late for a workout. They don't put with you short-cutting workouts, short-cutting drills, agility drills. There's just no nonsense. And I think that you will see a huge difference in the strength and development of this team, especially the older guys that have been there. They've now had a whole basically 6 months of it, I guess. You'll see a big difference in that, and I think it's a plus. Yeah,
it sort of feels like Steiner is more involved. You know, you go back to Horgan and you know, you see him at practices, but it just feels like Steiner as a whole is more involved with the day-to-day in a way that helps the guys. And like you said, they've stayed healthy, Luke, for the most part. I mean, and I think you can point to Steiner and their training regimen. They changed everything, and they absolutely had to. So the second part of that question was, do you see the same with this year's team comparing last year and this upcoming season? Yeah, I think we, you know, look back, if they get to 4 or 5 wins and you look at this season being a success, Luke, you can credit Steiner a a large deal because of how these players have stayed healthy. You haven't heard of any soft tissue injuries, but also being able to stand up physically and not getting worn down. And again, we've talked about that. Let's see here. Denver Door, another question. Who scores the most points for Vandy this season? Diego Pavia, Cedric Alexander, or Brock Taylor?
Brock Taylor.
Yeah, a lot of extra points. That's a good point. I do think Brock Taylor is the guy there at place kicker, and he's hit some 50. I don't know if he's gotten up to 55. I think 52 or 53 yarder. Obviously, you never know when you get into a game when the lights come on, but I think they'll be able to trust Brock Taylor this season. Diego Pavia, obviously, is the easy one to go with there, Luke. Cedric Alexander is a guy that, him in the passing game, I don't think we can forget about. He's going to be involved. And I think in the modern day running back, especially you look at the NFL, like you go to the Titans, a Tajay Spears type or a Tony Pollard. I feel like Cedric is, I'm not saying he's the next Tony Pollard, but he's pretty versatile enough to where he could get you that 15, 20-yard run. He could also catch out of the backfield and get you some passing yard production as well. So I wouldn't forget about him in terms of maybe catching a passing touchdown or two this season, but also being able to punch it in the run.
No, I say Taylor and Pavia, the first two we mentioned. I think when we get around the goal line, if they're taking away the fullback or when we get on goal line situations, Pavia is going to keep it, and whichever weak side he'll score on.
Let's see. Now watching a full preseason camp, another one from Denver Door. Are your expectations higher, the same, or lower than before camp started? For me, Luke, I would say they're about the same. Like I haven't, before fall camp, I thought this team, needed to get to at least 4. And I think they might be able to scratch 5. And I've pretty much stayed the same. There's been days where my expectations might be lower because of a bad practice or a bad offensive scrimmage like we saw last week. But I would say mine are about the same. I don't know if yours have changed at all.
No, I think mine are the same. I will say this. I think this team will be a Vanderbilt team that gets better as the season goes on. Now, scores of certain games like a Texas or an Alabama, you're going to say, well, no, they got blown out there. I'm talking about improvement as a football team. And I think by the time, if they stay healthy or semi-healthy, by the time they get down to those last 4 games, they're going to be in a lot better shape than they were last year mentally and physically.
Here's an interesting one from OG706. Are there any players that you could see be moved to the opposite side of the ball if needed? Just throwing a curveball out there. And last year, who was the receiver that Davion Walker they attempted to convert to cornerback? Is there a guy like that you think maybe this year, Luke?
I don't, and here's why, because I think our depth is better with 53 new players. We're an older team. I don't think you'll see that. In years past, absolutely. And it's usually done out of desperation, so by then it doesn't matter. But unless you have a rash of injuries at one position, I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah, that's obviously a good thing. All right, Luke, last one from VA72. Coach Lee indicated in an interview that the NIL portal situation, even though it has improved, was not yet what he wanted it to be. Please elaborate on what things need to be done to get this issue to Clark's satisfaction. I know you and Chris probably better to answer that than me, so I'll let you take a stab.
Well, I think there needs to be a cap on what you can and can't do for each sport, each team, and I think he's probably talking about that we're still working with the haves and have-nots, so to speak. When a Texas A&M is spending $4 or $5 million on a quarterback, or a Tennessee spending $8 million on a quarterback, Vanderbilt can't and won't do that. And then you have the academic portion for Vanderbilt that hurts, I think. So I think there's just some things that he would like to draw closer to where more competitive balance when he speaks to this NIL and portal stuff.
All right, that'll wrap up the mailbag. Obviously, big thanks to our sponsor, Sutherland and Belk, the longest running sponsor of the Vandy Sports podcast. And a couple of reminders: give us a review and a 5-star rating. That'll help us get noticed. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. $99 a year, $9.99 a month helps us a lot. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, as Chris mentioned at the top, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. Luke, I'll leave you with some parting thoughts. I know you're ready for week 1 to get here.
Absolutely. And I don't know, are we doing one next Thursday? Are we planning on doing?
Yeah, I would guess so. Yeah, I would shoot for that.
Okay, well, maybe I'll save it for next Thursday, but I'll go ahead and say it today anyway, in case I forget. Main thing, we have a chance for the stadium to be at least 50-50 Vanderbilt. So if you're deciding whether or not to go to that 11 o'clock game, get out and go. It's the first game of the season. And if you get mad after it, that's fine. But go to the first game, support the kids, and let's see if we can get this thing off on the right foot.
11 a.m. On ESPN right after College Game Day. I think the broadcasting crew was announced. Roy Philpott, Sam Acho, and Taylor Davis will be on the call. So it's here. It is here. You got Door Jam Saturday, fun fan event. So get out there and get your kids some autographs, and then it'll be game week. So we'll have presser next Tuesday. We'll get a podcast out next Thursday. Looking forward to it. Thanks for listening. For Luke Wyatt, I'm Billy Derrick. We'll catch you again soon with more episodes of the Vandy Sports Podcast.